No, I just stood there and said, does anybody have any spirit change? Smiled a little bit, and that's all I did.
Not to go on the street.
Those who earn from usury stand like one who is struck by the devil's touch. This is because they claim that usury is a form of trade. But God permits trade and prohibits usury. Whoever heeds this admonition from the Lord and abstains from usury may keep his past earnings, and his judgment rests with God. As for those who return to usury, they will deserve hell, where they will abide forever. God diminishes usury and augments charity, and God dislikes the guilty disbelievers. This is, and everybody's heard about high interest rates, and this is what's killing this country.
Exactly.
We could just see the crisis we're in now, 17, 18%. So we're being punished for this vicious cycle of inflation, and wages go up and inflation goes up, and it's all everybody recognizes that it's tied to usury. And this is one of the strongest statements against something in the Quran. It's struck by the devil's touch. Some of the other things that are forbidden, alcohol, gambling, it's even pointed out there may be some good in them. There's absolutely no good that can come at all from usury.
Only bad.
Only evil. And it's very strong. God diminishes usury and augments charity. So here we have in the middle of a section on charity something about usury. They're the opposite of each other. One of them means that not only do you give a man money, not only do you want it back, but you want more of it back than you gave him. Charity means you give a man money and you don't even want it back. So you forget about it. So it's economic. It's the underlying economic philosophy of Islam. I think is given right here in this ayah. Trade is permitted. Usury is forbidden. But our capitalist society is based on borrowing money with the idea that you borrow money from somebody who's got it at interest, with the idea that through your trading you're going to make more money and be able to repay it. But we can't see the result. It's just disastrous. So really in between the one extreme of having no free trade, which is what communism is, and having free trade with usury, we have what's sometimes been called socialism, where you have free trade, but the basics of the society are provided for. So you can have free trade and you don't have to worry about usury. So it's for me an indication that Islam is based on a type of socialism. Socialism permits free trade, but it doesn't permit excessive wealth. And it's only through usury that we have this excessive wealth. Now people are in a position that they can make more money through usury than they can through employing people and starting businesses. Instead of, if you can make 20% loaning your money out, and there's no risk because you've got a guaranteed piece of paper, it's better to do that than to set up a business and employ people to make the same amount of money. So it's a real disaster.
All the economic problems in this country is very rich.
Usury.
Is interest. I mean, they complain about inflation, but when you buy a house, it's $50,000, for example. And when you calculate after 30 years of paying for it, with interest and everything, the actual price is $150,000, not $50,000. So where did the 100,000 go? 100,000 will go to employees and salaries and tall buildings. The skyscrapers in every city are Home Federal Savings, FEMA Savings and Associates, Great Western Bank.
I take this myself to the extreme that I don't like to walk into banks. I have no bank accounts. I get paid by a paycheck. I usually go to the drive-in window. That's the closest I like to get to them. It seems to me that banks are great houses of sin. Worse than taverns, because after all, alcohol is supposed to have some good. At least some poor guy is making some money. Okay.
Right. There's some production of something.
Yeah, but I mean, at least there's some, there's some work involved. Whereas banks are centers of great sin. I really abhor them, and I have no feelings with them whatsoever.
You have this 50-story Acme Savings and Loan Association. It's Acme, what they call it, Acme. This one, Acme, is very popular. One of my favorite names, Acme Plumber, plumbing company. I call it Acme Savings and Loan Association. And it's a tall building for employees who produce nothing. They just administer sucking of people's blood.
Is there any restriction on
Homeowners.
trading?
Huh?
For example, in Turkey, if you have a business, you get it very easily. I mean, because they buy one, they sell 5 or 10, maybe even more than 100 times.
The interest?
No, not the interest. For example, if they buy something $1, they
Sell
sell
for
100
10.
or 100, I don't know. Is there any restriction, I mean, on that?
Sure. That's taking advantage of the people.
Isn't it true that some of the Arab banks themselves, the big Arab banks, they're involved with usury? The Arab money funds.
They're the worst.
All the people
They flunked the test.
if you work in the bank, does that mean that you also commit this, you help this bank to operate?
You're earning from usury.
If you work as a bartender, are you committing a sin? That's the same question. If you don't drink yourself. I think the question is, do you have any, are you making money with usury yourself? If you work in the bank and you have no money in the bank, and you make no money from interest yourself, well, it's just a job for you.
No, but you're earning from usury.
It's certainly isn't a desirable profession. I suppose
Now,
you could,
part of the banks do invest in certain things. You really have to study it very carefully. But there are chemical companies that produce things, and there are builders who produce things. Hundreds of companies that produce. Islamic economy is a productive economy. Now you notice the statement here that God diminishes usury and augments charities. Now God works in funny ways. To us, they're funny ways. And today I was using that example of the lottery in Arizona. The state of Arizona last year started the lottery. And for the first time in the history of Arizona, they have $100 million deficit in their budget. Now those who designed the lottery, which is a non-productive gambling prohibited by Islam, by God, in the Quran and in the Bible, when they put it down on paper, they were supposed to earn money, become rich, reduce the burden of taxes on the people, etc., etc. But God diminishes sinful earning, gambling or usury. So the state ended up with $100 million deficit. Doesn't make sense, does it? To them. To us, we understand it perfectly. Because they resorted to sinful earnings, breaking God's law, whether it is usury or gambling, they have to be poor. Even though on the paper, we are making money on the paper. Yeah.
The movie stars, the houses are almost wiped out.
Yeah, one thing that I learned today was that last week they had a program called Malibu. Anybody saw that? It was about breakdown in morale morality and how they live in, is it in many movies?
Yeah.
How the couples, married people mix and just total corruption. It's God was showing them in advance why I'm gonna give you a beating.
This happened today, though.
There's another one coming.
It's from Los Angeles to San Diego. All the houses. I saw the sea in the house.
Right.
They showed the sea.
What I don't understand, why doesn't those things happen to New York?
Oh my God.
Oh, they happen. They happen.
New York's been bankrupt.
They take turns.
So Texas or anything.
They take turns. I can show you on Surah 13. Because God is doing all these things.
There's a mountain in New York.
It's called,
You're down in 90 below.
that's the thing in the summertime.
Very much not. I'm scared of New York. You went there one time and I got lost in town. Finally. I thought Ohio would get lost.
I'm trying to find that verse.
31.
New York in the first place. Punishment to live in New York in the first place. Everybody's being punished by living there.
I hate it.
Okay, verse 31, page 168. 168. Page, the verse 31 says, even if the Quran caused mountains to move, or the earth to shatter, or the dead to speak, they will not believe. That is because the whole matter is up to God. Is it not time for the believers to give up on the disbelievers? If God wills, He can guide all the people. However, those who disbelieve will continue to suffer disasters as a consequence of their work, or have them strike close to them until God's judgment comes. Truly, God never breaks His promise. So they'll have disasters one after the other. And you see those hurricanes come and they aim for houses in many places. all comes close to them. So, but back to this verse 276, God diminishes user and gambling. You can add that too. Any sinful earning. If somebody steals something from someone or robs a bank, now on the paper it appears like they made money, but really they lose money. They end up losing. Any sinful earnings, God diminishes them. And we see these things in front of them. Speaking of the state of Arizona, I think they will repeal the insurance law again. Have you heard? They will what? They will repeal the insurance, the law requiring insurance. They wouldn't even listen to us. I wrote to the Civil Liberties Union, American Civil Liberties. Yeah, of course, they were not great in numbers, so they wouldn't even consider it. But God helps us. They will repeal that law. Sure. Go back to Rashid, 277.
Those who believe and work righteousness and observe the Salah and Zakat, their recompense is with their Lord. They have nothing to fear, nor will they grieve. O you who believe, beware of God and refrain from all forms of usury, if you are really believers. If you do not refrain, then expect a war from God and His messengers. But if you repent, then you may keep your capital without inflicting injustice or suffering injustice. If the debtor is unable to pay, then wait for a better time. If you give up the debt as charity, it would be better for you if you only knew. Beware of the day when you return to God and when each soul is repaid for whatever it has earned. No one will suffer injustice. Again, speaking of the sin of usury and the justice of God. So even if you have a bank account and you're in a money lender's account, 25,000 or more, you make a lot of, that money will just be lost, is what it's saying. And there's no way you can win from usury. And even if you win in this life, someday you're going to be held accounted for. You'll return, and you'll have to. There's another surah in the end of the Quran which talks about the rich being questioned for what they did. They'll actually be interrogated.
Right. That's a good word.
They'll be interrogated for what they did. The wealthy people. I don't know which one is. That's a very fitting. Which one is the? You know which one I mean about the
There's one in
almost
Surah-
at the end. It ends with they will be interrogated for what they've done.
Right. But there's even a better one in Surah 9 where it says that their gold and silver will be heated up in hell and they will be burned with it. Here's what you hoarded for yourself.
Yeah, hoarding. You are preoccupied with hoarding until you go into your graves. Indeed, you will find out. Yes, you will indeed find out. If you could only find out now, you would envision hell. You would envision it with an eye of certainty. You will be asked about your hoarding. So, interrogated about your hoarding. So this relates to that people will return to God and they will be questioned about their usury and the excesses of wealth they had.
People, unfortunately, in this country are worshiping the dollar so much that they're becoming very uncharitable. They can actually be charitable to the country and save it from the economic problems they have. The biggest problem in this country is a deficit. $100 billion deficit. Now this $100 billion deficit can be wiped out in a week. Now $100 billion deficit for 200 million people. Let's say America has 200 million people and the deficit is $100 billion. This means $500 per person. If the people are charitable to the government and give the government $500 each, the deficit will be wiped out, okay, as charity to Uncle Sam. But they don't want to do it. Now I cannot pay $500 to Uncle Sam. Fatima cannot pay $500 to Uncle Sam. But there's a very rich person somewhere who can pay for 10 of us, right? $5,000. How many people in this country can give away $5,000 to save the country? So what I'm saying is, with all the rich people in this country who can pay $1 million, $10 million, $500 per head can be given to the government to solve the whole deficit problem with all the interest problems that go with it and everything else. But it's the rich people who want the interest to be high. They can't stand to see it go down to 5%, for example, because it reduces their income. They have $200 million, but that's not enough. Somehow it increases their hunger for more money.
What about
it's amazing.
What about 279? Expect a war.
Yes.
From God and His message.
That's right. That's exactly what I mean by the $100 million deficit in Arizona. When they started the lottery, God said, "Oh yeah, you're gonna make money. Let's see about that." Then the copper went down. The copper, which is the source of income in this state. God did it. That's war from God.
Or God and His messenger means at the time Muhammad was alive, did he just actually go out and make war on people who did usury? It said expect a war from God and His messenger. That's what it says right here.
Right.
I mean, at that time,
The message is not confined to Muhammad.
But if
Any
this is
messenger, anyone who speaks on behalf of God will speak against the usury. If you speak on behalf of God, you'll be against usury. Right? You are speaking against usury, aren't you?
yeah.
So, when you speak on behalf of God, you're a messenger of God. Messenger is not confined to Muhammad.
I guess that most people interpret the word messenger in the Quran to exclusively apply to Muhammad.
That's another form of idol worship. They ignore all the statements in Quran that Muhammad is not the last messenger, he's the last prophet. When I look at it in 33, you go tell this to anybody and there's nobody after Muhammad. Surah 33, the verse is 44, I believe. 40, page 289. Page 289 in the top, it says, Muhammad is not the father of any of you. He is a messenger of God and the final prophet. He brought the final scripture. That's another big subject that you branch into. But when we go back, it says, expect war from God and his messenger.
What's the difference in Arabic between the word prophet, which is Rasulullah, prophet, and messenger?
Messenger is Rasulullah.
And what is prophet?
Prophet is a man who wrote the scripture.
Nabi. So there's two distinct
Definitely.
two distinct words.
Oh yeah. He's the last prophet. This is the final scripture, as you see from the title. He's the final prophet. But every village has a messenger. The Quran says every generation, every village, every community, they have a messenger. When you go on the market to meet somebody and tell them about God, the worship of God alone, you're a messenger of God at that point. That's another subject, but it's throughout the Quran. I'm sure you come across all those verses.
So when it says obey God and his messenger, it doesn't say obey God and his prophet.
No? Right. So you're going to come to many conclusions from that point. It's a very important point. Not only obey God and anyone who preaches the one God. Any person who comes to you and say worship God alone, obey that. Because this obeying means you're going to worship more than one God. You're going to idolize someone besides God.
So, if anyone comes and tells you, look, what you are doing is wrong, is against the law of God, and those people say that they can mock at you, then God says here in this verse is saying that, you know, I'm behind of him, I'm telling you, you know, for example, if I heard, I have some grievances to, for example, that I get upset about it, and God says, I make it even worse.
I understand the question.
If God and his messenger expect more from God and his messenger, if somebody comes in that says, don't do the usury, don't, you know,
Right.
put your money for,
Productive senses.
you know,
Don't break God's law.
yeah. And they say that you're just
You're not.
not, right. And then if he gets upset, he gets upset and he feels that I wish that he should be punished. And the God says, you know, I will punish you. That's my law.
He's quoting the Quran when he says to you,
Yeah, so that person will be fighting them.
Yeah.
Declare war on them. Right?
Right.
So that person who's preaching God's message is the messenger of God. Yeah. Nope. He made it up positive. The final messenger and the final prophet. So is there any place in the Quran where it says he is the final messenger and the final prophet? Because they use this expression a lot in the Arab countries, that he is the final messenger. They made it up. So Ahmad thinks it in the Quran, but it is not.
Besides, it says that there are same messengers to every generation, so that doesn't make much sense. If it's 1,400 years since then. So does that mean that the last 1,400 years we lost out? That wouldn't be fair.
See, we're learning, Rashid, when we look at these statements and think about them. So this country's deficit can be wiped out, but the rich people who can do it don't want to do it. See, when the government borrows money to cover the deficit, borrows from them and gives them 15%, 20%. Let us read the footnote 275. It says, usury is any fixed percentage of earnings in return for deposited or loaned money. Earnings that fluctuate with investment, profits, and losses do not constitute usury. It should be noted that the Quran condemns only those who take usury, while those who are forced by circumstance to pay usury are considered victims rather than sinners, as we see in verse 280. If you look at verse 280, it says, if the debtor is unable to pay, then wait for a better time. If you give up the debt as a charity, it would be better for you if you only knew. So the debtor, the person who took the debt is a victim. If you buy a house, the only way to buy a house is to have a mortgage on it and pay exorbitant interest. Exorbitant interest. Then you're a victim. Of course, the hadith will tell you anybody who pays interest is also a sinner. And that's a hadith, and that's wrong. Any of you meet some other people and say that if you pay interest, it is haram? But if you have to pay interest, then you're a victim. Any other ideas, Rashid, on this?
But there's sort of an in-between kind of deposit. I suppose it's really usury, though. The interest you're paid varies with the prevailing interest rate.
It's still fixed.
Yeah, but it's fixed at a certain time.
Yeah.
But actually, profit means
It's guaranteed.
there's a risk involved. You could lose everything. You could double your money. If you buy something and all, and the price of it goes up for some reason, that's trade.
Right.
You made a good business decision. Whereas with usury, you're guaranteed the money. It's like you say, it's not productive.
I remember we were discussing this the last time we had the Quran reading, and after we discussed it, Mariam came to me and Isa came to me and they said, you have money in savings, you can't keep them in savings, so when I put them in the stock market, can you recommend something? I did recommend something and the stocks went zoom and bless their hearts, they lost money in that transaction, but they didn't come and blame me for it, and I'm sure God made it up to them. So they were not interested in...
I even think that checking accounts, I think even though there's no usury involved with checking accounts, I think they're bad.
What if,
That's
if it's
just because you're dealing with the bank. I mean, the post office has a very good way of paying your bills. You can buy a postal money order. I mean, you have to send checks sometime for your bills. Your electric bill and your gas bill, you can pay them at drugstores and.
No, but if you're just using the bank as a depository where you're writing checks and you're not earning fixed percentage, then it's perfectly all right.
That's just my opinion. It's like going into a bar and having a Coke. Well, it's okay to go to a bar.
If you carry the cash in your pocket, you're subject to loss. You can lose it, or thing gets stolen from you.
There are other ways of protecting your money besides carrying it in your pocket.
Yeah, but it's not haram though to use the bank as long as you're not earning fixed income.
Like, what if you're a business and people pay you by check? What are you going to do with it? Just give it to the grocery store and say, here, this is
Yeah, for a business, I guess it's a question of convenience.
You're right though. I mean, if I can avoid them, I'll avoid it. Ahmed doesn't use the bank. Ahmed Rashad. You don't use the bank.
I don't use the bank.
Yeah, Mujahid doesn't use the bank. Very productive, very rich. This country is very rich. So much land, so many minerals, and the economy would be fixed if it's an Islamic economy. There's no interest. You can charge the cost of handling your money, your investment, not fixed.
So the stock market, seems the way it operates is not really an investment either.
Some people do use it for gambling.
Yeah, that's what it seems to.
Right. If people buy and sell every day, this is the business. It's just moving the money from here to there. That's gambling.
Because, I mean, it's all that kind of gambling that's been going on these days, and it's tied in with these super high interest rates.
Yep.
There's no work's getting done, but the
Right.
stock market's been going
Any
super.
non-productive and games of chance are gambling, prohibited, haram. You have to be productive. When Maryam and Lisa put the money in the market, they didn't. That was it. They put the money there and they just watch it go down.
Also,
But I assure you, God is making it up to them in many different ways.
what about, like, buying gold? It seems that, I don't know how that's acting. It's kind of a unique commodity. Call it that.
Very good. Very good.
You would have bought gold a year ago, it would have made about 30%.
Because
Well, that's not important, but gold happens to be a standard. For example, 15 years ago, for an ounce of gold, you can buy a good suit. Today, for an ounce of gold, you still buy a good suit. So the ounce of gold 15 years ago was $35, and a good suit was $35. Now, an ounce of gold is $500, and a good suit is $500. So what I'm saying is that you're stabilizing your money.
But it seems that that's kind of used
If you kept your $35 in your pocket from 15 years ago, it'd be worth 1/10 of what you really have. So this is where gold comes into picture.
Better to have gold.
Huh?
Better to have gold.
Yeah, but you can't eat it, you know. That's the problem with gold.
Actually, they do eat it. They spread it on cake in thin layers,
Yeah,
and it costs
India.
$35 a piece. No, in France.
Cook-
too.
Really?
Yeah, in some of the real
Oh, in India they
fancy
do.
restaurants and stuff.
That's what I think.
Oh, where you going? Oh, I have to get up. Okay, I'll wake you up with child my phone.
Yeah, your mother's trying.
Okay, Jahan, let's see how the Quran gives us details of our life, everything, regulates everything. 282.
Write down my intention.
Oh,
shall observe God as Lord and never cheat. Or mentally incompetent or incapable for some reason, unable to dictate. His agent shall dictate. You shall have 2 witnesses from among your men, or 1 man and 2 women, who you accept as witnesses. Thus, if one woman is biased, the other is biased. You couldn't believe it. The witnesses shall not refuse to give their testimony without that. Do not neglect to write down all the details, no matter how small or extensive, including the consequences. This is more equitable in the sight of God. It ensures the accuracy of justice and minimizes the doubt. The transaction is trade on the spot and instead more sin by not writing it down. So you may have witnesses thereof. No hardship shall befall any scribe or witness, if required, but the righteous member will be ruled by the law. If you observe God, God will teach you. God is omniscient. If you are traveling and no scribe is available, then a bond shall be placed. If you trust each other in this manner, the one entrusted in the bond shall return it with you and observe God and say, you shall not conceal anything with witness. Anyone who conceals the testimony will be guilty of that. God is fully aware of everything he does. To God belong everything in heaven and earth. Whether declare your thought or conceal it, God will both be answering to you. He will then forgive any will come to those who will strive to This just sounds like people lost.
What's happened? What's
This is a really good example of for the people who say you need Hadith and Sunnah for points of the law not covered in the Quran.
Yeah,
So how much more detail are we supposed
less
to
than
get,
that.
you know?
Exactly.
In any event, it says if you observe God, God will teach you. So you don't have to go anywhere else, even if there is something that isn't covered.
The blasphemy is that they don't believe God when he says, this is all you need. Okay, Jahan, you want to say something about that? Aisha, tell us about this page. Otherwise, the other Aisha will tell us. Okay, Jahan.
When you make the transaction, you should write it down because, first of all, it's safer. Generally, things are safer with what God agrees with. And secondly, when you write it down, you should have 2 witnesses. Either 2 men or 1 man and 2 women that both looks at it. If you're traveling and it's driving available,
In other words,
just make a promise, is that what that is?
no. I remember I was someplace in California and I came to San Rafael Bridge and they wanted a quarter to cross the bridge. I didn't have the quarter, so I wanted to post a bond. So you want to leave my jack, the jack of the car. So that's a bond. I'm trying to think of a bond that will make you come back and give him the quarter.
Some type of collateral.
Yeah. Huh? Right. You're traveling in the desert somewhere and you don't have any money and you meet somebody and you say, I need $10. And there are no scribes or witnesses or nothing. You just met this fellow. And you want $10. So you can give him the jack as a bond. No? You wouldn't let us. sound I was thinking about.
I mean, how would they know? I mean, how would anybody know if they went through or not? It's up to them. And,
Oh, there's gates.
yeah, I know, but it's not activated by a
San Rafael Bridge.
I know where that is.
I was coming from Sacramento to Berkeley, where I lived at the time. I never forget that because I was a foreign student, new in this country, and they wouldn't let me pass the court. I begged, I did everything, they wouldn't let me. My money's on the other side, folks. What can I do?
But, it's probably just trying out.
Now this commandment, folks, is very important. You actually do it. Anytime you lend anybody money, unless you don't want it, you write it down and you have witnesses. Because we tend to forget. You give somebody $20 and when the time comes you say, yeah, I give you $40. For some reason you just think it was $40. And your friend, you can lose a friend this way. If it's written down, then there is no question about it. You have witnesses. The idea of one man and two women, why? This is not equality, is it? And the idea is that if you have a man and a woman, if there is some fooling around with this transaction, the man can marry the woman, then you're in trouble. Because they'll be on one side. If you have one man and two women, even if polygamy applies and the man marries the two women, these two women will hate each other's guts, that they will not agree on something, on anything, on a plot. They take competition.
Right, even if they're not married, you can competition yourself.
But this is God's law and we have to stick to it when you do it. If you notice, the beginning says, "O you who believe, when you carry out a loan transaction for any period, you shall write it down." The commandment. Have any other ideas, Jahan? Well, it looks like we're going to finish this surah today, inshallah. Mujahid, you going to finish it? These are your favorite verses. They happen to be your favorite verses. 285.
Make no distinction among the prophets. The messenger believed in what was revealed to him from his Lord. And so he believed. He believed in Allah, his angels, his scripture, and his messenger. They say we make no distinction among any of his messengers. We hearken and we obey. Forgive us, our Lord. To you is the ultimate return. Allah never burdens any soul beyond its needs. Credit is earned for any righteous work, and discredit is incurred for any sin. Our Lord does not punish us when we forget our error. Our Lord, and let it not be your will that we violate the covenant, like those before us violated the covenant. Our Lord did not obligate us beyond our ability. Pardon us, forgive us, and shower us with mercy. You are our Lord, so grant us victory against the disbelievers.
Give us your thoughts on these two verses.
From the very beginning, the very they were put to obey Allah and to put to ask for forgiveness. Because they knew that Allah, the thing that he knew that we all return to, they will return to. And in the next verse, it says that Allah never burdens any soul beyond its needs. And it's saying that Allah knows what we can bear and what we can't bear. And probably when we think that we can't handle nothing else, there's no hope for nothing. And we think that everything is hopeless. You never know because I guess a lot of these testing with things with this, testing for the unrighteous work. It says that Allah does not punish us when we forget our error. Because Allah knows what He created. He knows that we're not perfect.
So we have a God to turn to with forgiveness. We make mistakes. We turn to God to forgive us. But the people who don't believe in God or have some other gods besides God, they don't enjoy that forgiveness.
They're not really forgiven either. Themselves.
But we forget and we make mistakes. Thank God that God is forgiver. Forgives us. Yeah. That's right. Only believers are forgiven. Idol worshippers are not forgiven. Now, I'm talking about, but you can repent from idol worship and be saved from idol worship, and then it will be wiped out once you repent. Idol worship is not forgiven if the person dies in a state of idol worship. That cannot be forgiven.
I think he said that the believers are not better than